Our text for today comes from Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 45. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their leaders lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." These are the words from the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Hi, Finley.
I don't want to be quiet.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't do much about that. It's okay. I just wanted to say hi because he said hi to me earlier and I didn't get the chance. So everyone is welcome. So do you need anything though? No? Okay. We give something to keep them occupied sometimes too. So. Oh, how about a story then? Would you like a story, Finley? Everyone else, would you like a story? Would you like a story? Okay, let me get. Do you know the one about King Midas? You know, Midas was a king of great fame and fortune who ruled the country of Phrygia. He had everything a king could wish for, lived in a great castle, had a beautiful daughter, had tons of gold. He thought that's what brought happiness, just having a lot of gold. So much gold that he spent his days counting it and covering his body with gold like taking a bath. For all you DuckTales fans, I believe this is the inspiration for Scrooge McDuck. And one day, Dionysus, the god of wine and partying, passes through the kingdom of Midas. He brings through one of his friends, a god of the woods named Silenus, who's delayed, and Silenus falls asleep in the rose gardens of King Midas's palace. So the king finds him, recognizes who he is, invites him into his palace, lets him stay a few days, and after that, Midas decides to take him to Dionysus. Very grateful to Midas for his kindness, Dionysus promises Midas that he'll grant him any wish. Ask one wish, I'll give you what you want. So Midas thought for a while, and then he said, you know this, right? "I wish that everything I touch would become gold." Gold. So Dionysus promises the king that from that day forward, everything he touches will turn to gold. The next day, he wakes up, eager to see if his wish had come true. So he touches a small table, immediately turns to gold. Wow. Touches a chair, touches the carpet, touches the door, his bathtub, it all turns to gold. Oh, magnificent. Sits at the table to have breakfast, takes a rose between his hands to smell its fragrance, and oops, can't smell it, turns to gold. I guess I'll have to smell a rose without touching it, he thinks. Next, he grabs a grape to eat. Oh, turns to gold, can't eat it. Grabs bread, glass of water, can't eat or drink, and he starts to get worried. Oh, whoa, wait a second. And at that very moment, his daughter bursts in through the room, gives him a big hug. She turns into a gold statue. So obviously afraid, despairing, raises out his arms and prays to Dionysus and says, "Take this curse away from me." And he hears Midas' cry. Dionysus tells him, "Go to the river, wash his hands." Midas does, and when he returns home, good news, everything returns back to the way it was before. When you heard or hear that story, what do you think of? Did you think, well, he messed up his wish? He should have simply made a different wish so he received lots of gold, but he didn't have to touch anything to get it. Or maybe you just thought, well, it's just a cautionary tale. It's about be careful what you wish for. It's the moral of the story. In today's text, I couldn't help but think of this story because in Mark 10 here, the disciples have a situation kind of similar to King Midas. What if you had Jesus' ear and could ask him for anything in the world? Even better, you ask him to give you your request before he even hears it. You're like, yeah, Jesus, you're going to give me what I want before I even tell you what it is, right? That's what they do. The brothers, James and John, they're alone with Jesus, see an opportunity to ask him for not a golden touch, but to them it's ultimate power. To be, it says, essentially the right-hand men of Jesus in glory, his vice president and chief of staff, if you may. And, they know they can't ask to be God. That would be blasphemy. So they ask for the highest positions of power that they can imagine gaining. And Jesus says, right, all this isn't mine to give to you. Were they thinking, did they mess up? We messed up. Should we have asked for something smaller? It was too big of an ask. Man, we blew it. Well, there's no time for that because this play they made for leadership and power has upset the other 10 disciples, right? That's really where the story goes. Probably because they wish they had thought to ask first. They also wanted positions of power, or maybe they just didn't want to serve under James and John. Those guys are the worst. They should serve under me. But either way, this causes anger in the group, we're told, probably distrust and dissension. Think about it. This story's been told many times throughout history, leading to coups and assassinations. I want to be in charge. This guy's next in line. Let's get rid of him. I want to be the guy. But this kind of grasping for leadership and power could destroy everything. We know in the story, Jesus is on the way to Jerusalem. That's right. And there's a leadership crisis among these 12 people. He's going to leave behind after his death? How's this going to work? How's this going to play out? So I see in our text, Jesus steps in to correct what's causing the conflict here. So here's Jesus' move, I think, at its most basic. He takes people that are seeking leadership and power that is according to the kingdoms of this world, and instead directs them to seek true leadership and power that is according to the kingdom of God, how God understands things. Or said really succinctly, he's directing his disciples to follow him. Well, why is this an issue in the first place? Why does Jesus have to address it? Well, why do people seek power and leadership according to the kingdoms of the world? Lots of reasons, right? You can maybe come up with a list immediately. You might not have enough fingers. I don't know. We like to talk about rich and powerful people. We want to emulate them to have successful lives. We look to CEOs and Fortune 5 companies to teach us how to lead. I've been to those conferences before where someone really successful says, this worked for me, it should work for you too. On the other hand, there's a lot in it for us. Leadership and power brings security, stability, whether it's financial or otherwise. We receive the praise of our peers. Man, that feels good. On the other side, why else? People seek leadership and power so they can have control, or we just say to be free, right? So I can do what I want. So other people can serve me. On the other side of that, of course, though, is things like we talk about the service industry, usually the lowest paying jobs that require manual labor, jobs people say that are reserved for the least formally educated teenagers and migrants. We make service hours, this is weird, I was thinking about it. We make service hours requirements people have to do for projects and grades, or punishments for breaking the law, community service. Is that because people wouldn't do it otherwise? I don't know. But in the midst of this, all these motivations, all these things that are going on in the world, Jesus is building his church. And what is the church Jesus is building? What does this community look like? I've been asking that question for a couple weeks as we go through Mark. And today in our text, Jesus explicitly tells us that he is building a community of servants. In the church of Jesus Christ, that is, the leadership and power models of the kingdoms of this world are turned upside down. The servants Jesus is making are called to something higher than that, but I guess when they look at us, it looks lower. And luckily for us, it's not just an idea. Jesus uses his own life as an example for the text, right? Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be a slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. That's everything right there. What does it mean to say that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve? What does it mean to say that the Son of Man gave his life as a ransom for many? So I like to think about it this way. Why didn't God come to be served as an earthly king? Why not as a politician? God help us, right? Why not as a rich man? Why didn't God come as a rich man? Why didn't God come as a priest in the already existing power structures of Jerusalem? What does it say instead that he came as a servant, and a servant offering his life in service as a ransom for all? Least expected, at the least. So I think at least three things here I want to point out and I think are good to sit on for a moment and think about. So by doing this, Jesus lifts up the way of service as the true way to greatness in God's eyes. That's clear. So all those who are considered in the lowest of classes, those who are considered in the least of society, they are on the inside. They know this truth about the world and are prized by God. The servant is the greatest. And therefore, all those who seek power and leadership that follow Jesus are directed instead to follow and seek after the way of service that Jesus sets for us. And the good news is a life of service is available to everyone. You don't have to be so educated, have so much money. Anyone can participate in the good news that's here. I think we also see that everyday existence is not something to escape, to leave behind, to get away from. In fact, we're called to embrace the messiness that's real life. It says God became man to serve us in our mess. That is, grace comes to us and is given to others, not in some mysterious way like falling from the sky and the clouds, but grace comes to us through acts of service, through physical things that are done to us and we do for others. God works through service. And I think most importantly, probably what American Christians need to hear the most, Jesus is telling us, is that life isn't about you. You hear that anywhere else? Life isn't about you. Jesus says instead, you exist to pour yourself out for other people. The model is clear, right? Jesus serves and gives his life for us so that we would then serve like he does. The news of Jesus' service for our salvation is so good that our lives are to become an offering and service to others in response. What can we say? So, in our time today, the story of King Midas and what Jesus teaches have been received, I think, ironically. I want to talk about irony for a second. The story of King Midas is ironic today because the phrase, the Midas touch, is used to mean someone who has good fortune. The commercial jingle for Midas, that automotive service company, will be stuck in my head until I die. Trust the Midas touch. But in the story, Midas's touch is considered a curse. People didn't get it, I guess. Perhaps, I think even more ironically, do people consider what Jesus calls us here to do to be a curse? That a person would be unlucky to serve as Jesus serves, that it would be undesirable. I like these stories because they make me wonder, what do I really want? What's my heart's desire? What would I ask for? Like, are my desires directing my life, or is it God's will driving my life? Or like both texts, if you could wish for anything and get it, would you wish to be a servant in the way of Jesus? Amen.